It's Aaron here, and today I'm going to be doing a crankbait understanding video, you might call it. Alright, now first things first, we're going to be talking about the line size you will be using. Alright, you see, usually when you're crankbaiting, if you want to get the maximum depth, usually the depth you'll get is what's on the package if you're using, usually I'd say between 8 and I'd go up to 14-pound line. You'll get pretty close to what the crankbait says it'll goes. Say you're using 4-pound line, you're not going to want to use that because you'll break it off a lot of times. And say you're using a 2,500-pound winch, then you probably won't get as much depth as you usually want to, or you might get more because it'll sink. But usually I'll be going between, the 10-pound fluorocarbon or the, I'd say probably, I'll go between 10 and 12, maybe 15, depends on the cover I'll be fishing, and it's always going to be fluorocarbon, mainly because it sinks, so you get more depth out of it. Next thing is, you're going to go with the different kinds of crankbaits there is. Alright, the first thing is, the one I usually use, mainly because of the depth of our lake, is the square bill. Now this is a KVD 1.5 in the sexy shad color, and this is just a good all-around crankbait. It has a solid bill, because if you ask Austin, if a lure's going to break, I'll break it, put it that way. So if it's still intact and I've used it, it's a solid lure. Next lure is, hang on, this is a KVD 3XD, and I'll use this probably around 8 feet of water, and it'll probably drag off the bottom in 8 feet of water. I'll probably use it between 8 and 10 feet of water right there. And then I've got the KVD 6XD. And I'll be using this in about deepest water I'll be cranking, so anything deeper than probably 15 feet I'll run this thing. And then another difference in crankbaits is, if you can hear this, some of them have rattles. And say one's like this one right here, this is an Excalibur XC5 200, XCS 200. And this one doesn't have rattles. So mainly the difference between that is one makes noise when you're reeling in, because when you reel in a crankbait it will wobble like this as it's going. Some of them will rattle, some of them won't. That's just the difference between noise and vibration. Depends what mood the fish are in, really. And next thing we go over is where you're going to be fishing a crankbait, or what conditions you're going to be fishing in. Usually if you're going to be fishing in, maybe throwing in structure, like laydowns, or in grass, thick grass or something, you won't be throwing a crankbait. You throw crankbaits in rocks. Maybe if the laydown is not real brushy or something, you might be able to throw a square bill in there and beat it around. So that's when you'll be throwing a crankbait. And another thing is, the crankbait, usually you're going to want it to scrape off the bottom. That a lot of times we'll get a reaction strike from them bass. Square bill's pretty good at deflecting off things. As you can see, when it goes, it faces down like that, and it'll hit off rocks and stuff and just deflect. And I think that's all I want to go over today. ARS Nation, signing off.